For my research presentation 3, my focus is on the Miami Collage Garage. It is in the Miami Design District. A parking structure is typically a building that is aesthetically less pleasing. The structure in Miami's Design District takes a different approach. The structure was created for functional, social, and aesthetic use. My discourse is that although the parking structure currently serves for more than one function, the question remains about the necessity of the structure. To build an 800-car parking garage assumes there is current and future need for a space that can accommodate that many vehicles. The current shift to autonomous vehicles and mass transit systems may make the need for a parking structure obsolete and unnecessary. It can be debated that the structure can go against the shift towards a greener future. Greener being one that is less oil dependent, where many people must not own a vehicle. The idea of shared vehicles and driver services such as Uber may become more popular, and these vehicles can be autonomous and continue moving after a person has reached their destination. This diagram kind of looks into what the parking garage looks like and how different floors of the parking garage have different areas where people can socialize and communicate. Floor 5 is a children's play area, and 14 was designed to be a public library. There's also a garden on the top floor. So the parking garage has, the functional use of it is, the garage is an effective space that can park up to 800 vehicles. The garage has social use because it can be used as a way to be involved in social engagements. There are places for social interaction. On one of the floors, there is a play structure for children. A play structure can act as a social interaction point for both children and adults. The aesthetic use is that the structure itself is quite beautiful. The structure offers more than just a space for people to be able to park. It also acts as a signifier of the city or a space it belongs in. Much like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, the garage is a beautiful monument that visitors will associate Miami Design District with. We wanted to turn a parking garage into the most interesting structure in Miami, said Craig Robbins, the CEO of DACRA Development and the visionary behind the Design District, an art, fashion, and architectural playground near downtown Miami that was in vogue. So generally, the general layout for a parking structure can be seen in this diagram. It's what you're probably used to seeing when you park in a city or possibly the mall or wherever you go where you've been in a parking garage. Parking structures are not typically built with other uses in mind. This quote said, "The best design of a parking facility depends first and foremost on a number of factors, including user location, local codes, building size, functional layout, etc." In this quote, which I found on this website, about how to basically what you consider when building a parking structure, nothing mentioned that you should consider other potential uses for the parking structure. So the following should be considered in the building of a parking structure: parking space size, vehicle width versus parking stall width, vertical circulation for ramps, garage footprint dimensions, accessible spaces. None of these really included anything that discusses how to be able to transform the space in the future if necessary. Excuse me. When building parking structures that can potentially be converted into other spaces like offices or apartments, certain things should be considered. It must be possible to reinforce the floors, and columns must be spaced so that furniture can be placed in a practical manner that would make sense in a living environment. The space must be able to be converted into a closed space so that it can be heated and cooled. because that would be something that came up in the future, something like air conditioning and heating. So beyond that, parking structures can provide a great opportunity to create iconic structures. Consider something like the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. It's easily identified around the world as belonging to Dubai because the architects used an opportunity to create a great and beautiful structure out of a hotel, something they could have just done simply and just built your typical square-looking building, but instead they made this iconic structure. Another structure in Paris is the Eiffel Tower. People never look at the Eiffel Tower and don't think Paris automatically. So that's something that architects and designers can consider when they're building a parking structure. How can they make something that will leave an impression or be seen more as kind of like an art piece, not so much as just this thing that you have to have so that cars can park. So I asked the question, will parking structures become useless because the movement towards self-driving vehicles can lead to little to no use for parking structures and leave large empty structures in the middle of towns or cities. The trend towards online shopping leaves more and more malls empty in their parking structures, which are not typically built to be aesthetically pleasing. That goes back to the previous sheet about creating something that's more visually appealing. So I think an architect has the responsibility to be able to think beyond the scope of their original intention for a parking structure and build for a future that does not include individually owned vehicles. The growing awareness of the negative effects of greenhouse emissions on the earth has made more people consider alternate sources of power, which includes implementing mass transit systems which eliminate the need for a vehicle. Other things like autonomous vehicles are becoming more popular, which means if vehicles are driving themselves, they don't need to stay in one space for maybe 8 hours while someone's at work or a few hours while somebody is out and about at downtown or some other place. The rise of driverless vehicles and decline in car ownership means reimagining these ubiquitous structures, which can be seen that in this photo, just an idea of what parking structures can be made to look like if they are reimagined. Parking structures, again, should be built with multiple uses in mind because they are such grand structures. They can be built as great monumental public spaces. A piece by Arian Marshall called "It's Time to Think About Living in Parking Garages" discusses the reality of needing to create parking structures that can exist for up to 1,040 years. Plans for a 1,029-foot tower with 4 levels of above-grade parking that, if necessary, can be converted into apartments and offices. And a quote by this firm was that, "I feel we do have the responsibility that if the parking uses do change, we design to be able to adapt to that change." And that was a typo. It was meant to say 140 years. Another example is this, it's called The Mod in LA. And it says, to illustrate the humble parking structure's potential, Gensler designed a fictional LA cultural center called The Mod, which showcases how parking garages can be reclaimed as civic or public spaces. Cohen points to several details that would allow the Mod's parking structure to slowly transition over time from a place that only serves cars to one that serves people. By raising the floor height and making sure floors are level between ramps, the space anticipates new uses. The addition of knockout panels and modular sections make walls and ceilings easily removable. Allowing light and circulation between levels and garages can be outfitted with the proper amenities like utility hookups to prepare them for future workspace or retail uses. There's more examples in Greenwich Village of parking garages being converted into other uses in Minneapolis and in Atlanta. Here are more images of what parking structures can and maybe will look like in the future if they need to be reimagined. This is one that actually already happened on 12th East Street in New York. It was a parking garage that got converted into sustainable luxury lofts. This piece was added on top to give kind of more of a luxurious feel to the spaces. So in conclusion, as architects and designers, it is our responsibility to be able to think outside the scope of what we would normally consider for a parking garage or any buildings for that matter, and consider how they might be converted and not just built for a singular use. Thank you.